Hi guys, it's your girl Tass and I'm back with another video. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're an OG, you already know me. Welcome back. Guys, I really appreciate the love and support I've been receiving on all the videos I've uploaded so far in this series of my 10-year green card journey. I just really appreciate the support. Thank you so much for supporting me. And without further ado, let's get into today's video. Again, I must take this opportunity to apologize to you guys for not uploading a video in this series for 2 months. That was never my intention. My sincerest apologies. I know this topic is very time sensitive, especially if you're using my videos as a guide for your own immigration journey. So again, please accept my sincerest apologies and let's get right into today's video. So in today's video, I will be going over the instructions page that accompanies the I-751, which again, you know, is the petition to remove the conditions on residence. And how do you know that? Because I've discussed it in several videos before and I've said it several times before. So just like all the forms that USCIS issues, this instructions page also has an expiration date, as you can see, so be mindful of that. And where can you find this form? This form is an official USCIS released form and it can be found on their official website. Let me show you right now. Right, so this form can be found on the USCIS website where it says I-751 petition to remove conditions on residence, and here you can see the actual application which you fill out and submit to USCIS, and this is the instructions that accompanies that form, and that's what we'll be going over today. So I feel it's important to go over this form because this form literally is the golden handbook, if I may describe it as that really helps in the actual filling out of the I-751 application. This form literally tells you down to the ink that you must use, the importance of how to sign your I-751 form, and it really saves you in the little details from your application not being rejected, just for technicalities and things you could have avoided if you read this form in the first place. So the form begins by saying what is the purpose of Form I-751, and again we've discussed that in previous videos. It says this petition is used by a conditional resident who obtains status through marriage to request that U.S. citizen and Immigration Services USCIS remove the conditions on his or her residence, right? On page 1 of this form, the second part, it says who may file Form I-751. And as I've mentioned before, again, this form may be filed jointly or separately, right? So if you're still married to your U.S. citizen spouse or your legal permanent resident spouse, you must file the form jointly with that partner. But if you are separated for any reason, for the spouse has died, you have separated because of divorce, or you endured cruelty, abuse, or hardship, while being with that spouse, then you are allowed to file this form separately. Guys, that is why it is pertinent to watch my videos in sequence, and that is why I release videos that build on top of the previous video. So it is important, I cannot stress this enough, it is important to watch the previous video before the current one. Okay, so right here in part 3 of the actual I-751 form, so not to get you guys confused, I'll be referring to the instructions page as the instructions page, and for the actual I-751 form, I will say actual I-751 form, okay? So this is what the instructions page was talking about as it relates to, it's asking you, how are you filing? And again, when we discussed this in our previous video, it asks, I showed you guys that you decide jointly, you click with your spouse, or you decide if there's a waiver or you're filing individually and you select the reason for that here. So that's what that is talking about. Let's move on. When should I file Form I-751? So if you're filing jointly with your spouse, you file only within a 90-day window before your green card expires. If you're filing individually with waiver, anytime before the removal or status loss. How do I know when my 90-day window begins or when it actually opens? So you can find this information on the actual USCIS website. Again, guys, this website is very helpful. So let me show you how to calculate your 90-day window. Right here is it shows it. It says conditional permanent resident. A conditional permanent resident receives a green card valid for 2 years. We discussed that in my previous video. Again, to remove the conditions on your permanent resident status, you must file a petition within the 90-day period before your conditional green card expires. Use our filing calculator to determine your 90-day filing date. So this is exactly what you need. So you don't need to take out a calendar and actually check on your fingers. They literally do the heavy lifting for us. So there are 2 types of conditional residents. So the first is the person who receives a green card early in their marriage. And then you can also receive a green card through entrepreneurship if you make investments in the United States. So this one isn't applicable here. I'm dealing with the marriage-based green card. So let's click on this one. You go down and it says use the filing calculator, which is exactly what you need. And as you can see, it also has other helpful stuff, when to file, how to determine when to file, etc. So use filing calculator, and this is what it says. It says enter below the month, day, and year of the expiration date shown on your permanent resident card, and the earliest date you may file your petition will be calculated for you. So let's, for example, say the earliest date is, let's stick with January 30, 2026. And there it is. Voila. It says the earliest date you may file your petition to remove conditions is November 1st, 2025. So if USCIS receives your documents on this exact day when you post it, that is completely fine. If they receive it a day before, if they receive it a day before, you would have filed too early. But if they receive it on the exact day, then you're fine. So tip, even if you've prepared your documents in advance of this date, you don't want to mail it off too early and run the risk of USCIS being in receipt of your documents before your 90-day window actually opens. Let's do another example really quickly. So let's say December 15, 2025. There it is. So the earliest date you may file your petition to remove the conditions is September 16, 2025. So on your screen here, you're seeing the signature section of your actual I-751 form. So there are 2 ways you can fill this form out. You can handwrite your answers in black ink only. You'll see why I said that. Or you can type your answers in, then you print the form out. Now, whichever way you choose to fill the form out, that's up to you. However, what is important is that you absolutely must sign this form after. So even if you type your answers in, which is what I did in the previous video, you must print this form out after and sign your signature with black ink. A typewritten signature will not be accepted. And that is stressed here on page 2, where it says you or your signing authority must properly complete your petition. USCIS will not accept a stamped or typewritten name in place of any signature on this application. And of course, it says if you're underage, which is under 14 in this case, your parent or legal guardian may sign on your behalf. And it goes on and it goes on. Now let's discuss filing fees. So Form G-1055, available again on the USCIS website, tells you what the fee is for this among all the applications that USCIS offers. And it brings you to this page that says all forms. Now you go here and you select the category of form, and in our case we're dealing with the green card based form, and now it shows you all the green card based forms. So you're going to search for the one that is applicable, and in this case we're dealing with I-751. Found it. There you go. Filing fee stated as of August/September 2025, the filing fee is $750. Page 3 of the instructions page, this is where it really gets into it, and it guides you step by step on how to actually fill out form I-751. So the first tip it gives is to type or print legibly in black ink. I know you guys have heard me say that countless times before, and I'll continue saying it. Tip number 2, if you need extra space to complete any item within this petition, use the space provided in part 11, the additional information sheet, or attach a separate sheet of paper. Remember that example that I did with you guys, as you can see on your screen, this is the additional information section, part 11. And if you have additional information, you supply it here. And again, I showed you guys exactly how to fill that out, where it says page number, part number, item number. I showed what to put. I also said in that video that I released before this one that even if you don't have any other additional information to provide, you still fill out the section that asks for your personal information. So it says your name, Johnson Brown, for example, first name, middle name, and you provide your A number. Now, tip number 3. It says answer all questions fully and accurately. If a question does not apply to you, for example, if you have never been married and a question asks provide the name of your current spouse, type NA unless otherwise directed. If your answer to a question requires a numeric response is 0 or none, for example, how many children do you have, or how many times have you departed the United States, type or print none unless otherwise directed. And again, you guys can see in the example that I did in the previous video that I put an A where the question wasn't applicable to my situation. All right. Number 4, country of citizenship or nationality. Again, on your screen, I showed you guys where to put that. And it says USCIS online account number. Tip number 5, it tells you how to find your USCIS number. Again, I also told you guys how and where to find that in my previous video. I cannot stress that enough, that it is important to watch the previous video. So if you're confused while I'm going through this, I would suggest stopping this current video, go and watch my previous video, and then come back to this one. All right, it will make more sense. All right, number 6, part 2. Again, on your screen, biometric information. On your actual I-751 form, we did that. I showed you what to put there, how to fill that out. Height, weight, eye color. It literally tells you how to enter the information. For example, it says for height, select the values that best match your height in feet and inches. For example, if you are 5 feet 9 inches, select 5 feet 9 inches. Do not enter your height in meters or centimeters. It does the same for weight. It tells you how to enter your weight. It says in pounds, and do not enter your weight in kilograms. So number 7 on this instruction sheet is relevant to part 7 of the actual I-751 application, and it pertains to you, the petitioner. It asks for your statement, your contact information, acknowledgement of appointment at USCIS Application Support Center, certificate, and signature. Again, go and watch that previous video if you haven't, and I showed you guys exactly how to fill that out and when to sign and what ink to sign in. Again, I cannot stress that enough. Number 8 relates to part 8 of the actual application, and that is in relation to your spouse. And it says, if applicable, because remember, you can fill the application out, without a spouse. So you're doing an individual petition. So number 9 relates to part 9, which is asking for the information for an interpreter. If one was used, if one wasn't used, I showed you guys what to put. So do not run the risk of thinking that no evidence needs to be submitted with this application to remove the petitions on your green card. Not because you submitted evidence before does not mean that you don't need to submit evidence. No, you need to submit evidence with your application, and I will go on and add that you need to submit fresh evidence. So what is that? What do I mean by that? I just mean that you're not going to submit the same old evidence that you did 2 years ago. You're going to submit new evidence, fresh evidence that shows that your relationship has continued to build and grow. And again, if you are filing individually for whatever reason, you're going to show the reason for that. Has the person died? Is there a death certificate? Have you guys gotten a divorce? Is there a decree absolute? That is what they're asking for. So right here it says you must file your petition with a copy of your permanent resident card, the front and the back. That is paramount. It is not an exception. It must go with your application. There are exceptions here if they're applicable to you. So now it asks for evidence of the relationship. What is that? So again, in a previous video, we've discussed what a bona fide marriage or a bona fide relationship means. We've discussed that word, and the evidence that they're looking for here looks like this. So for example, you may submit joint lease agreement, joint bank account statement, insurance information, photographs, tax returns, affidavits, joint mortgage. What else? There are a number of examples of things that you can submit. I will be releasing a very, very interactive and fun video on bona fide evidence. I think you guys will really love it and look forward to it. Again, subscribe for that video. Right here it says other documents that you consider relevant to establish that your marriage was not entered for the purpose of evading U.S. immigration laws. So whatever you consider that's relevant and that would be helpful to your case, submit it. Right here it says if you're filing as an individual due to death of your spouse, you're going to submit the death certificate. And if you're filing because the marriage is terminated, you're going to submit the decree of divorce. Okay, so let's move on. Right here it discusses criminal history and what does that mean and what to put on your form I-751 if you do have a criminal past. Again, guys, I can't stress enough how important it is to read this form by yourself in full detail, even if you've watched this video. So let's move on. Now it says where to file. So if you click on this, it brings you directly to the USCIS website, which shows you the lockbox facility that is relevant to the state that you live in. Right there, you can have a look, find your state, and this is the lockbox facility that you're going to address your application to. That's how it works. So if you're using USPS, which is the post office, that's the lockbox that would be applicable. If you're doing FedEx or UPS or DHL, then this is the lockbox that is applicable, and it goes according to state by state. All right, let's move on. Then it continues in discussing address change. It says if you're not a US citizen, you must notify the USCIS of a change of address within 10 days of moving from your previous residence, and you do that by going over to the USCIS website and doing the address change there. If you guys need me to help with that, let me know in the comment section below, and I will definitely go into that in more detail. Right here it says note, do not submit a change of address request to the USCIS lockbox. Right? You don't want to do that. Then it moves on to processing information. So initial processing. Once USCIS accepts your petition, we will check it for completeness. If you do not properly complete this petition, you will not establish a basis for your eligibility, and we may reject or deny your petition. So you want to fill your application out and file properly the first time. Only time. You don't want to have to do it over, and you don't want to give them grounds or reasons for rejecting your application, right? Then it goes on to decision. The decision on the form I-751 involves a determination of whether you have established eligibility for the immigration benefits you are seeking. USCIS will notify you of our decision in writing. On the last page, it speaks of penalties. If you knowingly and willfully falsify or conceal a material fact or submit a false document with your form I-751, we will deny your petition and may deny any other immigration benefits. In addition, you will face severe penalties provided by the law and may be subject to criminal prosecution. That's it, guys. I've come to the end of this video. Don't forget to give me a big thumb up if you found this video useful, just to show me your love and appreciation in really sitting down and making content like this for you guys. Don't forget to share this with someone else, at least one person who you know would find it helpful as well. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe.